Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 165.
Hi, I'm Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I are your hosts for this podcast and the founders of the Becoming Ellie community.
We decided to name our community Becoming Ellie because Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Jill and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie, fit and strong as we age.
You can find out more about the Becoming Ellie community and this podcast at our website, becomingellie.com. Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I. Sign up for our newsletter while you're there.
Hey, Jill, I thought we might share some comments from our Becoming Ellie community members. Maybe that will inspire someone to join our private Facebook group.
Good idea, Chris. One new member said, new to the group. I found this group through the podcast, and now it's one of my favorites. Together, we are stronger. I'm not going to share her name because the whole point of a private group is that it remains private. If you join us, you can talk openly without it being public.
Feel free to go find us on Facebook as Becoming Ellie and join the group.
Today, we're talking with Nicki Williams about life after menopause. There's lots of good news in this episode. Let's go to the podcast. Nicki Williams is an award-winning nutritionist, author, and speaker about women's health and hormones. She is the founder of Happy Hormones for Life, helping women of all ages to rebalance their hormones, reclaim their health, and feel better than ever.
Nicki is the author of It's Not You, It's Your Hormones, the essential guide for women over 40 to fight fat, fatigue, and hormone havoc. Her new book, Life After Menopause, Embracing the Next Chapter with a Healthy Body and Mind, is due out this year.
Welcome, Nicki. It's great to have you with us today and get to talk with you.
Thank you so much, both of you, for inviting me. I can talk about this stuff all day long, so you'll have to compare it somewhat.
Okay. Well, so what got you into this work?
Well, I was in my early 40s. I had a very responsible job in corporate world, working for an airline, Virgin Atlantic. I don't know if you've heard of them. But,
yes.
And I had a very obviously big team and a lot of responsibility. And I had two young kids at home, and I was commuting quite a long distance as well. And the whole thing started. I could cope quite well in my late 30s, but as I went into my 40s, my kids sort of were in that 6 to 8 bracket, and they're very demanding, and as kids are, and I was juggling crazily, and I just got to the point where it was such a struggle to get through the day. The juggling was just off the scale. I was exhausted, I was stressed out and overwhelmed. I was starting to get anxious when I'd never had anxiety before. I was really irritable and snappy and moody. I had brain fog that meant that I was forgetting things at work. I had a belly fat tire around my middle that I couldn't shift with the usual tools that I had at my disposal that we used to work. And I just thought, this isn't how I want to live my life. I was pretty miserable. And I went to my doctor, because I knew nothing about health, hormones, nothing at all. I was completely not in that arena. Doctor looked at me after 10 minutes and said, you need this. And on the prescription was Prozac, which was the antidepressant of the day. And I'm sure you've heard this many times, as I have since then.
Well, the same thing happened to me.
Well, exactly. And, it's really common. It's getting hopefully less common, but at the time it was the standard treatment for anything hormonal or whatever. Anyway, I walked out and I looked at it and I thought, well, that's really strange. That was the last thing I expected. I didn't have any history of depression, didn't have it in my family, kind of instinctively knew it wasn't that, but I didn't know what it was. So luckily for me, I had, my dad is still around and he is a hormone doctor. Then I had no idea what that was, but I rang him up and I said, Dad, doctor wants me to put me on this. These are my symptoms. And he said, oh, Nick, you're 42. It'll be the perimenopause. And bearing in mind, this is 15 years ago, that word didn't exist back then. I didn't know what it meant. Never heard it. all I heard was menopause, and I just thought that happened when you were pretty old. And I wasn't there yet. I was still having a regular cycle, had no concept of that, menopause issues. So I said, what do you mean perimenopause? What on earth is that? So he gave me the education that I never got at school. I haven't had, none of us get through life. I had no idea that this was happening to me. I didn't know what hormones were. I didn't know what they did. Certainly didn't know how to look after them. So having a big chat with my dad, completely blew my mind. And, I was just fascinated from then on about these hormones and what they did, and particularly how women all around me included, had no idea this was happening to them. And I thought, how can this be? How can we not know that this is going to happen to us? What the hormones are doing, how they change, and how on earth that we're going to manage this transition and come out of it better.
So if I could ask you a question about the hormones, if we have to know something about the hormones, like what would that be? I mean, if there was just a few sentences, if it's not you, it's your hormones. What is that book about? What hormones are we talking about?
Right. So great question, because actually I had the same question, because I said to my dad, surely, what are these things called hormones? They're chemical messengers that run around the body telling everything what to do. And there's over 100 of them that we know of. But I said, I can't even get my head around, that kind of number. So when I started looking at them, there were 4 that came up quite often. And they seemed to be sort of responsible for 80% of what was going on. So I said, right, I'm going to just concentrate on these 4. I called them the feisty 4. They're in my book, and they are cortisol, insulin, thyroid, and estrogen. Those are the 4, particularly for women, that we need to really focus on. And if we do that, we'll get 80% of things, right.
So that's cortisol,
insulin,
thyroid. Thyroid's a hormone?
Yeah. And estrogen, which kind of goes, I put progesterone in there as well, because that's important, but those are the 2, they work together. So if we concentrate on balancing those 4, then we're kind of most of the way there, and we don't get overwhelmed with everything else that we could focus on. When my dad explained that to me, I started just making some simple changes to my diet, lifestyle, and my supplements. I didn't do any medication or anything like that. I didn't do anything drastic or radical. I just started tweaking things. And honestly, within a few weeks, I started noticing the difference. The brain fog lifted, the energy came back. My mood was so much better. And I even started to sort of make a dent into the weight gain that I'd put on. So I was like, wow, this isn't rocket science, but it's also not well known amongst my peers. None of my friends knew any of this stuff either. So I said, hang on, this is, I got angry actually, because I thought, women are half the population. Why aren't we being helped with this? Why are we given antidepressants for something that actually we can manage quite naturally ourselves if we had the information ourselves? So that became my mission. And I gave up my lovely corporate job, which wasn't lovely, but it was well paid. And went back to college to study nutrition and hormones. And 4 years later, I founded Happy Hormones for Life. And that was a decade ago. We have been helping women, hundreds and hundreds of women all over the world to give them this education, this empowerment, and these tools to be able to look after themselves naturally. Now, having said that, that was my 40s, my perimenopause, and that was what the book was about. Your 40s, for most people, it's in their 40s. And how to manage things naturally, how to balance those 4 feisty hormones. Now, when I got to 50, things started getting a little bit trickier. And by the time my periods had stopped around 52, it felt like overnight things changed completely. I started getting really bad night sweats. So I would be waking up completely drenched every sort of half an hour to an hour all through the night. Now, sleep for me is a non-negotiable. I have to have a good night's sleep. Otherwise, I'm just absolutely hopeless in every way. So when I started losing sleep and, just this whole interrupted sleep every night, and the heat thing was just awful. And I thought, whoa, this is something I've never experienced before, because I was managing it all very lovely up until that point. And I thought, this is a new landscape. These are new challenges that I'm having to face. On top of that, my mum had been diagnosed with osteoporosis. So she had a hysterectomy in her 40s and was put on HRT for about 5 years until they took her off because they thought it was dangerous. And so since her late 40s, she'd not been on any hormone replacement. So she ended up with osteoporosis after she fell out of her car and broke her hip. So that was all awful. But that diagnosis also made me think, okay, so that I don't want to happen to me. I got my hormones tested because that's what we do at Happy Hormones. We do hormone testing. So I did that on myself, and all my estrogen, progesterone, testosterone were all very low. So I didn't go into it blindly. And with these symptoms and the osteoporosis risk in the family, I decided to go on to HRT. But because of my knowledge, I was able to go onto the right form of HRT, which for me is body identical. We call it here in the UK. I think it's bioidentical with you, which is the natural, molecularly identical hormone replacement that we're able to get. So you're literally just replacing the hormones as they are naturally in the body. So when I started just taking some estrogen, progesterone, again, my night sweats stopped, and I was able to combine my natural approach with some HRT. And that was the perfect combination for me. And I've been on that ever since. But what I found in my 50s was the natural approach for me wasn't quite enough. So this book came about because I started to get adrenally challenged, which meant basically I was burning myself out through my work, and I was absolutely exhausted again. And I had to stop for a little while, or just pull back for a little while. And in that time, it was just after COVID actually, because during the pandemic, we got super, super busy, to the point where that's what triggered really the burnout situation. So I came off of the pandemic really just so exhausted, but I was able to take a little back step and just slow down a little bit. And in that space that I gave myself, I just kept getting the message right. Okay. I've done my work around the perimenopause and what to do to manage it. But the 50s is a whole new landscape for me and a lot of other women who've come through it with me. So I need to do something to support them, because it's not just about hormones anymore. We've got all this other stuff going on. We've got, chronic disease looming. We've got to look after our bones, our heart, our joints, our skin, and all of that stuff that you don't necessarily focus on in your 40s. So I realized then that I had more to say, and I thought, I'm just going to have to write this next book. So the new book is all about this next chapter. What do we do after menopause? Because there's so much resources now, so much information around the menopause that, hopefully most people have got access to something to help them through that. But then after the menopause is when we really need to think about how do we make the most of this extra life expectancy that we've got? Because we have, majority of us, average life expectancy for a woman is in her 80s, 83 roughly. And, that's, if your periods stop at around 50, that's an extra 30 odd years that we've got to maximize, make the most of at a time when many of us have a little bit more freedom, potentially, in that, we might not be having, the kids might have flown the nest or whatever, or we might be in transitional situations with our careers, jobs, relationships, that sort of stuff. So it's a chance and it's an opportunity for many of us to transform our lives, to blossom, to flourish, to do other things, to look after ourselves and do what brings us joy, rather than serving a lot of people that may have done for the last 50 odd years. So I wanted it to be a really positive book about what the fantastic opportunities that we have. But we have to have our health to do that, because health span versus lifespan is a different kettle of fish. We might be living longer, but we're not living well in those extra years. So for me, it's about getting you really healthy, body, mind, and spirit, so that you can actually make the most of those years in whatever way you want to.
Yeah, that's what Becoming Ellie, our community, is about. The Fit Strong Women Over 50 is all about, is, living better in the second half of our lives.
Yes.
Testing. You said you do testing. Is this something that we would go to our regular doctor and get tested for the different hormone levels? Or how would a woman get the hormone testing that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of similar in the US to here, in that standard mainstream medical care doesn't give you the best options for testing, it's usually through blood, which is one way of looking at your hormone levels, but it's not necessarily the best for estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, because it'll just be a snapshot in time of what's running around your blood. Whereas in the private sector, and you have this similar tests, such as the Dutch test, I'm sure you've heard of, which is actually from the US. And that is a very comprehensive hormone test. It's done in the urine. So you have to do 4 samples over a 24-hour period, which gives us a big amount of information around your hormone levels, but also over those 24 hours, we can see how your hormones are actually behaving in the body, and how they're being metabolized, how they're going down different pathway, how your livers are dealing with them, all this stuff. So from a practitioner point of view, like us, we can look at these test results and really focus on where you need the most support. So for instance, if you've got low levels of estradiol, which is your main estrogen, you may have compensatory levels of your other 2 estrogens. So often the doctors will only test 1 estrogen, or you've actually got 3 in the body. So your body may be compensating, but you might be put on HRT for low levels of estradiol, but actually then you're going to be pushing those levels up, which isn't something that we want to do. We can look at cortisol levels. We know cortisol, as your stress hormone, is such an important hormone, and particularly during menopause and beyond, because it has a massive impact on not only your other hormones, but your health in general, and how you're actually going to think and feel to be your optimal best. So we can test your cortisol over 24 hours and, see how it's performing against how it should be released. It should be, nice and high in the morning to wake you up, and then it should drop off very slowly towards evening time so that you can feel tired and go to sleep. Now, often when we test cortisol, it's kind of the other way around. So you get low in the morning and then shoots up at night so people can't sleep, or it might be a little bit fluctuating, or it might be completely flat where, you've gone through that stressful period and then your adrenals are kind of struggling to pump out the cortisol and keep you awake. So, cortisol is a huge one. And for me, especially when I tested my cortisol back in the day when I was at college, I thought, I don't know what I'm doing this test for. They were giving them out, we all got a kind of free test, and I got the cortisol one. I was like, oh no, really? I'm not stressed. I don't need this. I want the gut one. I want to test my poo. But no, I got the boring cortisol one. I said, no, this isn't going to do anything. But actually it was the best thing I could have got, because my cortisol was literally on the floor. And I thought, whoa, hang on a minute. I didn't think I was stressed, but actually when you test and you see the results on paper, it makes you realize that actually, I do need to do something about my stressful life. So it can sometimes be the motivation you need to kind of make changes. But for us as practitioners, it's the comprehensive nature of these tests, and we can do so much with the results to personalize your particular protocol. Because, we can put anyone on a healthy diet for your hormones, but when we know exactly what hormones we're dealing with, we can really laser focus that and say, yes, okay, we need to support your liver, or we need to support your, the way your thyroid is working. So let's get some nutrients in for that, or whatever.
So let's talk about those nutrients. What kind of changes do you recommend people make to their diet or way of eating?
Generally?
Yeah.
So, it's not rocket science. It's not hard. We all know that whole foods, as unprocessed as possible, good levels of protein, enough protein. I see that's one of the biggest things I see women struggling with, is not getting enough protein in their diet, particularly vegetarians and vegans, where they're really probably not eating the healthiest plate of food. We need that protein in for many, many reasons, for not just for hormones, but for our brain health and our heart health, our muscles, to preserve the muscle mass, which declines very quickly as we age, as you know. So protein, but also really, really, the thing I struggled with the most, and I was surprised about, was the carbohydrates. So how we have to adjust our carbohydrate intake. Whereas before I could pretty much eat anything in terms of carbs, but since peri and menopause, we really are more sensitive to carbohydrates. So we have to make sure we're eating the right kinds and not too many refined. So the refined carbohydrates, for me, if I think of them as just long chains of sugar, which is what they are, bread, white pasta, white stuff, pastries, biscuits, that kind of stuff, they're long chains of sugar. So they may not feel like actual sugar, but that's how they manifest and break down and metabolize in the body. So refined carbs are not a menopausal woman's friend, because what that will do is push up your insulin levels overall. So you'll get a blood sugar spike, and insulin will come along and do its job, and then you'll get a dip, and you'll end up on a kind of blood sugar roller coaster throughout the day, which just makes you tired, foggy, groggy, moody, massively fat storing, and also it can impact your sleep. So it's the blood sugar roller coaster is the one thing I would say to focus on your diet is to balance that blood sugar by eating healthy fats and protein at each meal and watching what kind of carbs you eat. So really just thinking about carbohydrates in terms of fruit and vegetables, mainly veg, and then whole foods where possible. So whole grains and things like that. So if you do that and you stay hydrated and you limit your snacking in between meals, then, you're most of the way there.
So do you endorse maybe limiting certain food groups like dairy or gluten or alcohol, sugar? Like how do you coach your clients?
Well, in terms of healthy aging, which is what I'm focusing on now, it really is. I have a section in the book which talks about aging foods and those that are kind of healthy aging foods. So things that will switch on your inflammation genes or your aging genes, and then those that will switch on your anti-aging pathways. So if we think about, if we sort of split foods up in those categories, then we can really focus on, I don't want anyone to kind of block anything or deprive themselves of anything. But if you do an 80-20 kind of balance on the healthy aging foods and then treat yourself occasionally, then that's fine by me, because I don't believe in deprivation. And I just think that causes extra stress and guilt. And we don't want that either, because that's just going to negate all the benefits. So healthy aging foods are the ones I've talked about, the fats, the good carbs, and the protein, and hydration, which is something that we all struggle with as well as we get older. And then the aging foods you've mentioned, sugar, the refined carbs, vegetable oils that are in everything that's processed. Alcohol, unfortunately, is in the aging food bracket. Yeah, I think you've covered the main ones there. I think there's a couple more, but those are the ones that we really focus on reducing and then pushing up the nice healthy aging ones. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite go-to meal or menu that you like to make as part of your everyday, your week? You come home at a busy day, and is there something you like to make?
I love, so whenever anyone's coming around, and pretty much every week in the fridge, I'll have a great big, quinoa salad. I love quinoa, and it doesn't have to be hard either. I don't make it myself often. Sometimes I will, but often I'll just buy in, some cooked quinoa. We have a lovely brand here. You probably have some in the US too, which is all, no additives, just plain cooked quinoa. Put that in a bowl. So easy. Chop up some salad, some spring onions, some tomatoes, some cucumber, some peppers, and then some mint. I put some mint in, and then some feta cheese. Season it all with some lovely, fresh, extra virgin organic olive oil, and some nice apple cider vinegar, because that also helps your digestion. And you've got a really healthy, protein-packed vegetarian or vegan without the cheese salad. And then I can put that with anything that I'm cooking. So if I'm doing a salmon or chicken or some meat, because I am a meat eater, then I'll use that quinoa as a side instead of rice or pasta. And then I'll just add in some green veg or green salad. So that makes it really easy to then go and kind of make the easy stuff around it if you've got that really jam-packed, nutrient-filled salad in there. So that's one of my little go-tos.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know we talked a little bit about diet, but can we talk about gut health too? Do you have what role does our gut play in balancing our hormones and menopause and all of that? And how do we improve our gut health?
Oh, it's such a big, we could have a whole podcast on
It's a huge question, I know.
We're going to try and summarize it.
But you can answer it in a sentence or two.
Oh my goodness.
We didn't want to skip over gut health, No,
absolutely. It's really important. And, most menopausal women will notice actually that their guts don't work quite as well as they used to, whether that's more bloating or indigestion or cramps or, diarrhea, constipation, that kind of stuff. It is, definitely linked. It's not just kind of wear and tear, but our hormones have a big impact on how our gut works and vice versa. The gut also has a superhighway link to the brain as well. So everything is linked. So we do have to look after our gut because it doesn't work as well as when we were younger. So we can do that through diet because, if you do what I just said about, focusing on those good, healthy aging foods, you're going to be supporting your gut already. But things like making sure you're eating enough fiber's super important for that. And, if you're eating a good few portions of fruit and veg a day, then you're helping with that already. Probiotic foods, they're really popular at the minute, but there's a reason for that. It's because they're just helping to support your microbiome. So, there's probiotic live yogurts. The thing you've got to just be careful of is that you're not buying processed foods that just because they're labeled probiotic or prebiotic doesn't always mean they're good for you. So make sure I would just go, actually don't bother with anything that's deliberately made as a probiotic. I would look at natural foods that already have that in them. Things like your live natural yogurts, your kefir, kombucha, which is I think it came from the States, actually. We've got it here now, luckily. Kombuchas, kefirs, sauerkrauts, kimchis, miso is a good one. All stuff like that, which helped to naturally replace some of the good bacteria in the body, rather than taking a probiotic, because there's so many different strains of probiotics. You may have your microbiome is completely different from someone else's, so you may not actually be short of that one you're taking, and that's really not going to do anything. It's a bit of a waste. So taking a natural doing it through food seems more sensible to me.
You mentioned that when you made your discovery about what was wrong, that you made some lifestyle changes, and can you say what those were? What did you start doing differently?
There's two things I did very differently. One was stress reduction. So I didn't know if that was a thing before I realized that stress was an issue for me and it was making my symptoms worse. So for me, I'd never heard of sitting and doing a meditation, or even just sitting still for 5 minutes. That wasn't in my life at that point. So I made it my mission to just carve out 10 to 15 minutes a day just for me, whether that was first thing in the morning before the kids got up, or last thing at night before I went to bed, or maybe it was lunchtime, where if I was able to, I'd go out for a walk in nature or something like that. But some form of relaxation where my stress response would be switched off, because that's so, so important. And I see a lot of women saying, well, I'm taking a holiday once a year, or vacation once a year, or I'm going on a spa day once every blue moon, or that's my, or I get a massage once a month. It's just not enough. Those things are lovely, but you need to carve out some time every day, because we're stressed from morning to night and often beyond. So unless you're switching off and you're doing it, making time to switch off that stress response every day, even if it's just a few minutes, it's not going to, a vacation once a year is not going to do anything for that. So we've got to build it into our daily schedule. And that's where it can get tricky for a lot of women, because we're busy and we're looking after everybody else and we don't take the time for ourselves. So that self-care was a huge piece for me. I started doing a meditation practice, which I still do today, which I absolutely love. That's not for everyone. You could actually just sit and read a book. That does the same thing, well, similar thing. It switches off your cortisol. You can go for a walk, as I said. You can sit and do nothing, or you can go and do your hobby if it's gardening or whatever it is that you do, yoga, whatever. So that was one for me. And the second thing, which has just gone out of my head.
Well, maybe exercise. Did you change how you were exercising? I knew it.
Yes. So I was doing a lot of cardio back then. So I would go for runs and, I'd come back from a run feeling absolutely shattered, depleted, exhausted, because my life was already exhausting. So how I thought that was going to help, I really don't know. I just thought that was something I needed to do. So when I realized, and I'd done my research on how important it was to stay strong and maintain your muscle mass, that's when I started doing strength training. And that was hugely different to what I'd done before. I had less cardio, and I was doing more kind of HIIT cardio rather than long runs. And then I started strength training, and that really, really changed quite a bit. It was really brilliant for my mood, and I just felt different. I felt good. I felt strong. I felt more powerful, and I've kept that up until today. So those are the two things that I did in terms of lifestyle that were very impactful for me.
Okay. Can we throw in there sleep? Any advice on improving our sleep?
I am so lucky, and apart from that, those couple of months that I had my night sweats, I've never had a problem with my sleep. So I'm going to just hold my hand up and go, I'm one of the lucky ones.
You are lucky.
I am. I'm so sorry to everybody, but that's one of the things I've not had to worry about. But I have had a lot of clients who have really struggled with their sleep. So sleep is so important, and that's one of the things that why we get so anxious about not sleeping, because we know it's important, and we know it makes us feel rough the next day if we haven't slept. But the more we know that, the more anxious we get and the less we sleep. So it's a vicious cycle, isn't it, sometimes?
Yes, that waking up in the middle of the night and thinking, I'm not sleeping, I'm going to get dementia.
Yeah, exactly. It's awful, isn't it?
I have so much to do tomorrow and I'm going to be in such a bad mood. That's what.
And the worst thing is you've got that clock next to the bed, haven't you, telling you how much you're not sleeping, how much time you're missing. And, oh no, it's awful. But I think with sleep, we have to work out what's the root cause of it, because it can be different for many people. So that stress is number one. So you've got to work on the stress and do that stress reduction every day. And having a nice, calm bedtime routine. I see a lot of women sitting in bed on their laptops, working, answering emails right up until 11, midnight.
Keeping their brain going when it needs
to
slow down. Yeah.
If you don't switch off that brain and tell it to relax, and now it's bedtime, we've got to start winding down, the brain's not going to get that message, and it's just going to keep you awake and stimulated. The other thing is also, you don't only want to watch thrillers at night either on the TV or Netflix. That's not going to help you get off to sleep either. But, there's so many other things that play here. So we've got stress being one, diet is another one. So if you're on that blood sugar roller coaster, which I talked about, that can carry on through the night. So often you might think, you might find yourself waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning. And that can often be to a blood sugar dip, because you're on the dip as you go through the night. And, that's not fun, because that dip will cause cortisol to be produced, and that's going to wake you up. And it's quite often really hard to get back to sleep after that. So we want to get off that blood sugar roller coaster, make sure we're nicely balanced, not eating too late at night also, because we don't want our digestion going all the way through the night, and that can really hamper your sleep quality. But one of the biggest things I found can make a difference is the light in your bedroom. So I have a blackout blind now because I need complete pitch black in my room. Otherwise, the light goes into my brain and tells my hypothalamus that it's still light outside, so not time to sleep. We need that dark to stimulate the melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. So if you've got street lights coming into your window, if you've got little beeping lights on your clock or your TV or your phone, that can all impact the production of melatonin and stop you getting a good night's sleep. So getting everything covered up. If you've got lights out of your room, get your phones out of the room, charging in a different place. That's going to help too. But make sure the room is nice and dark and nice and cool as well, because it needs a nice cool temperature to be able to get the body temperature down to get to sleep too. So there's lots of things, caffeine and alcohol as well. I haven't even mentioned those, but they can definitely mess up your sleep. So they seem pretty obvious to me, and I'm sure your listeners will know all about whether they're affected by
caffeine and yes, and alcohol. Yes.
I was wondering about supplements, to change the subject from sleep to supplements. Do you, what kind of supplements did you use? What kind of vitamins do you suggest we take a look at?
Really good question. And with all the research that I've done, and I've done a lot on supplements, I came out with my top 5 for women over 40 and over 50. I mean, it's pretty much anyone from midlife onwards. They are a good multivitamin, which gives you active levels of B vitamin. So it's not a multi that you go out and buy in the supermarket or the grocery store. You need a good quality one, because you need the right form of the ingredients, particularly your B vitamins. And you need enough of them to make a difference. So you need a good quality multi, with your minerals and your zinc, selenium, all that sort of stuff in there as well. And there's lots of formulas out there, and I've got my favorite brands. I can send you a link for those.
That'd be great.
You can see if they're available in the US, or match them, for formula. So multivitamin. And then I always, advise the vitamin D, because, depending on where you live, if you're not getting sunshine year round, then you're going to need a vitamin D supplement, because the body isn't able to make it, and we definitely don't get enough through our food. So I like to take K2 with my vitamin D because that helps the vitamin D work properly. So vitamin D and K2, and in this country, I take it all year round because even in the summer, it's a bit sporadic with our weather. The next one is magnesium. It's such an all-round mineral that we can't get enough in a multivitamin. So we need to take that separately because you need at least 3 to 400 grams of magnesium, milligrams of magnesium. So there are different forms of it, but I like glycinate. It's probably my favorite because it's really absorbed well by the body. And citrate is a good one if you've got a sticky bowel, which means, constipation. If you're a bit backed up down there, then citrate can help loosen things as well. So that's a good one to take. Number 4 is vitamin C. And this is because not only is it fabulous support for your immune system, your skin, your eyes, your hair, it's also one of your most powerful antioxidants, which we need as we get older because we are getting rusty on the inside with oxidation. So antioxidants are there to help prevent that and keep us young. So that is a key one for me. And then lastly, is our essential fats, our omega-3s, EPA and DHA, which are the fats that we need, particularly for the brain, but for your heart, skin, your eyes, and your joints. So, omega-3s, incredibly important. And if you're eating enough oily fish, sardines, mackerel, herring, that kind of stuff, then if you're eating, 3 to 4 portions of those a week, you should be getting enough omega-3s. But I know 95% of my clients don't eat that much fish. So, especially the oily fish. So, I always like to get them on a supplement. But again, be very careful with these supplements. If you are on medications already, you need to check with your doctor because some of them can interact. So make sure you're getting good advice before you start taking supplements. But those are my top 5 that I love to recommend for most women going older. And then there's lots of targeted ones. If you want herbal support, if you're not on HRT and you want herbal support for your symptoms, there's lots of lovely formulas out there for that. There's formulas for stress, energy, joints, all that sort of stuff. So again, that's not general because we'll all have different symptoms and different needs, but those are my top 5.
Your next book is about life after menopause. And what advice do you give women who are now post-menopause? What can we do to improve our health?
Yeah, well, it's a whole book worth. So
right, yes.
I'll try and give you a snippet. You know what? For me, it's really important to give women all the information that I think is evidence-based. It is good, solid information for people, but I don't want it to be do like I do because I'm not you and you're not me. So every single woman is unique. They need their own personalized toolkit for every stage of their life. So what I'm doing in this book is giving women lots of different bits of information and asking them to create their own toolkit from it. So don't do it all because that's impossible anyway. And just pick what works for you. There's lots and lots of different strategies in there. And you can pick what works for you, your body, your lifestyle, your goals, your likes and your dislikes and whatever. So I'm hoping it's a pick and mix, if you like, of choose what works for you and then put it all together into your own plan. I call it like a jigsaw puzzle. So your puzzle's going to be different from someone else's. And it's your responsibility because you're the one who knows your body best. What's going to work for you and put that puzzle together. And it may take some time because you're going to try different things and it may need adjusting as you go through because things change and you evolve and your body changes. So keeping it flexible, but having some kind of toolkit and plan to really enable you to embrace. That's really the message, to embrace this time that we have. Because it's a real privilege to have this time. Not everybody gets this extra time in our lives. And depending on, your own, it'll be different for everybody again. Some will be lucky enough to live to 100 and some not. But whatever time you've got post-menopause is a bonus for me because we didn't have that many generations ago. And it's a very special time if you for you to kind of transition and make it something that's really meaningful to you and give you some joy and fulfillment. So it's not just about the healthy body. It's also about the positive attitude. And I focus on that a lot because that is absolutely key. We know the mind-body connection is super strong. So we know that, negative thoughts, negative beliefs, negative self-talk, all of that stuff that many women are used to can actually translate into negative hormones, and then they can switch on or off your genes. So they've already established in lots and lots of studies that actually a positive outlook on aging can potentially extend your life by 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And there's other studies too that look at this. It's really important. So for many women, myself included, the self-talk needs to change. That voice inside that, when you look in the mirror tells you look old, you look fat, you look ugly. That translates literally and physically into switching on genes for inflammation, for stress, and that affects how long you live, essentially. So for healthy aging, we have to start in the mind and start being kind and compassionate to ourselves, most of all, and reframing the perception of aging that society has for so long and still does give us, in that, we end up irrelevant, useless, invisible. We don't accept that, and you don't have to accept that. It's the way you think and talk to yourself that's so, so important. And you can change that through reframing your thoughts, and lots of different techniques look at that.
I appreciate that you wrote this book because it is a stage of life that is, for women, that has never been particularly important to society as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things about aging, but that's sort of for everyone. But thank you. This is a topic that really needs some exploration. So I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm doing it not just for me, but obviously for women who feel like invisible and feel irrelevant. And I just want to say, how much wisdom we have, how much experience and compassion and resilience we've gained through all the years that we've been around. And we have so much to offer other people, the community, but also younger people who are struggling with their mental health, with anxiety, with their own experiences. We've been there and we've done a lot of that stuff. So we have so much to offer. And it's just a question of actually forgetting what society says and actually going out and offering that anyway, and doing it in your way. But the more of us that do that and get the confidence to do that, the more society is going to change and see us differently.
Right, exactly. What about brain health? Do these things that you're recommending help us get rid of that brain fog or increase cognitive health? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a huge one. Protecting our brains so important as we get older, because one of the big risks is obviously dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's a growing statistic, unfortunately. So yeah, the brain thing is super important. Now, there are lots and lots of different ways we can protect our brain, mostly through, a lot of that through diet, making sure we're getting a lot of nutrients, particularly the vitamin D, that's really crucial for the brain, and the omega fats. So if you're getting those in, that's a really big, a really big thing for your brain. But also things like keeping your brain active is so important. Brain, training, doing new things, connecting with people, even having conversations with people really, really stimulates your brain health. Starting new things, learning a new language, doing puzzles, playing video games, whatever it is for you that you like to do, new hobbies, singing, whatever. That all helps, with playing sports as well. Exercise is absolutely crucial for brain health, but particularly strength training. Now I keep coming back to strength training, but it is, it not only lifts your mood, but it's really, really crucial for brain health. And it's again been shown in many, many studies to extend your longevity, the strength training, weightlifting and resistance training. Those are just some of the ways you can do that, but also managing stress. And that's in every category. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things. Stress really, cortisol just kills the brain cells. So we've got to manage that stress again to preserve our brain strength. But that's, it's part of this jigsaw puzzle that you can put together for yourself. Yeah. And things like alcohol, not good for you either, for your brain.
Yeah.
But we know that because you get the hangover that kind of tells you, doesn't it?
Yeah. I have a question that this is a much more specific question, I think, but can you talk to us at all about red light therapy and heat therapy? Do you have any thoughts on that for women?
Yeah,
like saunas?
no, this is quite new in terms of healthy aging research, but heat therapy's been around for millennium, hasn't it? So saunas, heat therapy in general has been used for many, many centuries, in terms of health and well-being. So we know that it can reduce inflammation. It can be good for your heart. We also know that studies have been done on people using saunas, and if you do a sauna twice a week for 20 minutes, that we know that reduces your mortality risk by quite a lot, particularly your cardiovascular risk of disease risk. On the other side, we know that now cold therapy is also really emerging as a therapeutic technique. The body produces cold shock proteins, which help make the body more resilient. It helps your immune system, reducing inflammation. And it also can help you be more resilient to stress, because that is a stress you're putting on it deliberately. But as it gets used to it, it increases your resilience in general. So again, really, really interesting research and a great thing to incorporate. You don't have to go and jump into an ice bath. You can have just a cold shower for 10 seconds after your warm shower, or, and then just build up the time. So the longer obviously you do it, the more benefits. So, it doesn't have to be super expensive or inconvenient. And then red light therapy is even newer, but it's kind of an infrared therapy that uses infrared light at low levels to kind of rejuvenate your cells. So it's being used a lot for skin care, dental use as well. But the jury's out a little bit in terms of how effective it is yet, because it's fairly new on the market, but it looks quite intriguing as a therapeutic tool.
Any other therapies that, that maybe are still emerging and that you've recently embraced?
Yeah. So, I just want to touch on fasting, actually, because I know that that's something in the last few years that we've all been told is the miracle cure for everything. And it is brilliant for a lot of people. It's really, really good. And it certainly ticks a lot of the boxes for healthy aging in terms of boosting mitochondrial function, reducing that oxidation, helping with insulin resistance and sensitivity as well. So, making us more adaptable, cellular repair, regeneration, lots of things it can help with. And one of the easiest ways to do it is, in my view, is this time restricted eating. So you're doing your overnight fasting. So you just finish your dinner, say at 6 or 7 p.m. and then wait, don't eat or drink anything until the next meal, 12 to 16 hours later. That seems to work quite well for women who find it difficult to skip meals, or maybe who have blood sugar issues. But I would say that, it's touted as the be all and end all, but actually for a lot of women, it doesn't really feel good or work. So in that respect, it's not very sustainable for many women. Now, if you have any kind of adrenal or thyroid issues or blood sugar imbalances that are quite extreme, then fasting is definitely not for you. If you feel hungry on it, like first thing in the morning, you absolutely, some people are really hungry for breakfast. And if you're forcing your body to wait, again, I think you're going against what your body's telling you. So that may be not the right way. Maybe you should have breakfast and then maybe finish your eating a little bit earlier if that works for you. But what I'm saying is it doesn't work for everybody. So if fasting hasn't made you feel better or improved your symptoms or is too difficult, then I would just not use that as a technique. And I do explain that in the book as well. It's not the miracle cure for everybody.
So I had one more question about things that people are using. This is something that now keeps popping up for me, and that's these vibration plates. Have you seen that, where you stand on them and it's supposed to be like great for your bones and like, so you don't have to do as much exercise, I guess. But do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not an expert on that, I'm afraid. I do have one at the gym, which I haven't gone near, to be honest, because I'm a little bit worried about falling off it.
Well, that's it. I've seen people saying, they do their squats and things on it. And I thought, I don't need to be standing on something when I'm doing that.
They're hard enough as it is, aren't they?
Yes. But, so I know people who are sort of talking about using it as in place of exercise or of strength training that they just stand on it and vibrate, and it's supposed to strengthen your bones.
I'm sure it has some benefits, but
okay, so it's not.
I don't think there are any shortcuts when it comes to exercise.
All right.
It reminds me of that thing that you would put around your stomach and it would jiggle your stomach, like a strap thing. That always seemed kind of strange and old fashioned, but everything cycles through, I guess.
I guess comes back. Yes. Your new book, and we can find it Amazon, any other book
on your usual book places. You can also get it off my website as well directly. It'll be available on the website. So it's a guide for every postmenopausal woman. I feel like I don't want any postmenopausal woman to feel invisible or forgotten. This is a guide for them, and I hope it inspires and empowers women to really transform themselves and make sure they're in the best possible physical and mental shape, so that they can change, they can impact the world. Because I really do believe that we need more women in power. We need more women changing things in their local communities. We need more women at their best in order to make this world a better place.
And I'm just going to remind our listeners that the title is Life After Menopause, Embracing the Next Chapter with a Healthy Body and Mind.
And you said it's going to be available from your website with the links, but what about services that you offer? You have a lot of people working at Happy Hormones. I assume that you work with people online.
Yes, we do.
Can you tell us type of services?
Yeah, we work I've got a 30-day online program for anyone going through perimenopause. They can just buy that online. It's pretty cheap if you watch the masterclass. And then you can do that on your own. But if you need help and you need testing, we work one-to-one with our clients and take them through lots of different testing depending on what you need. And then we create personalized programs, particularly looking at your result based on your results, basically, through diet, lifestyle, supplements. And if you need medication, we'll obviously refer you to the right people. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
And your website's happyhormonesforlife.com, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have links to that on our show notes so that people can find you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicki, so much for talking with us today. You've given us so much information. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope it's been helpful for anyone listening.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Why do I feel like postmenopause has been a big discussion topic lately? It just seems to come up a lot. At any rate, I thought Nicki's comments were really good. I feel like there's lots of things we can do to improve our health and life as we move forward.
Yeah, I thought that she really did a great job, and I'm looking forward to seeing her book. I know it's going to be published soon, and I haven't read it yet, but she had some great things to say, and I really want to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. I think her book should be really helpful. We tend to talk a lot about estrogen and progesterone and the other sex hormones, testosterone. It was interesting that she talked about other hormones playing a big part in our health too.
Well, she talked about not cholesterol, cortisol, that hormone. And that's, I think, responsible for waking me up at 3 a.m. when I was having trouble sleeping. So it's really important to get that one under control. And she had some good ideas. I liked her ideas on her favorite meals, the on-the-go quinoa with fresh veggies and some feta cheese with maybe salmon or chicken on the side and some greens. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that actually sounded very good and very easy to do. And
right,
she made the point, and I try to remember this. There is absolutely nothing wrong with buying things that are already cooked for you. Like if you can get already made quinoa, there's nothing wrong with using that.
Yeah, I've always felt guilty about buying chopped vegetables because I'm perfectly capable of chopping vegetables. But if it's already prepped and it's right there in my fridge, that's what I'll reach for. I'll do the right thing instead of, something else and I think that's the whole concept behind that prepackaged food stuff. It's so darn easy to eat when you're busy. we got to sort of fight that by prepping.
When I remember, and I don't know, it's been so long ago, when they first started coming out with bags of chopped up lettuce, I was horrified. Like, who would buy this? This is horrible. You just buy a head of lettuce and chop it up. Big deal, Well, now I don't even think twice about buying that. And what I realized recently is I've started to buy sometimes the actual bagged whole salad where they've chopped up not just the lettuce, but also a bunch of other vegetables too. So I don't use it all the time. But if I'm like going somewhere and I need a quick meal, it's really useful to have a bunch of chopped up vegetables all ready for you and it has seeds and whatever, I don't know. It just, I laugh at myself because there I was just horrified that someone would buy chopped lettuce and now I'm buying the whole darn salad in a bag.
Well, when you eat that all the time and it's ready and there, it's just very helpful. Her advice for postmenopausal women about what they eat, about the protein, things that we've heard over and over with our different experts and, the guests that are doing amazing things. Eat enough protein, strength training, eat whole foods, find the right carbs. You just keep hearing this over and over. And I think that's so important to have it reinforced, because it really makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good thing to do. I really like the idea of like figuring out what works for you and what works for your body and eat what nourishes you best, because what works for me may not work for you or anyone else.
All right, good. Well, I'm wondering about our listeners. Please let Jill and myself know if you have some thoughts on our talk with Nicki or you want to share your progress to becoming like Ellie, fit and strong. Leave us a message.
Yes, that'd be great. You can find us at becomingellie.com, or you can find us as Becoming Ellie on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
It was great talking with you today, Jill. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
I am too. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.